We are live.
All right.
Hello, Lynette. How are you?
I'm good. Such a pleasure to be on, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Me too. Me too. Man, I just adore you. I'm so grateful that you said yes. This is my new platform, Conversations That Matter, because I really want to start to talk about things that are impacting all of us and really educate and empower people more than anything. And it could be mental health related or not. So I thought, what an amazing opportunity to sit down with you, someone who I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the past several months. Um, so in this, working together with you within the first responder community. So grateful that I was introduced to you many, many months ago. So kick us off. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, why you care about mental health and beyond.
That's a whole lot. All right. I've been in law enforcement for over 40 years. Really, I'm not going to do my age. However, I started out as a fugitive investigator, as you know, and I got so good at it that I was on the front page of the newspaper. America's top bounty hunter is a girl. Little Lynette bounty hunter. And it's because I brought in so many people uh, as fugitives. And I don't brag about that. I say that just to frame where I came from. Grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, and I grew up in a really bad neighborhood, and I had a very traumatic experience at the age of 7, and where I was dragged into a building, raped, and left for dead. And I don't tell that story. It's also a framework, right? I got out of that and never told, and it led me to some, mental anguish, which I took into the fugitive investigative field, right? So everybody wanted to work with me. I'm great. I'm on TV. I'm on a newspaper and whatnot. But what everybody didn't know, I managed an 8-man squad at that time. And what everybody didn't know is that I was running and jumping from roof to roof in Manhattan, and jumping on big guys, 6'9", and I'm 100 pounds. And everybody loved to work with me. They felt safe with me because I had their back. But what they didn't know is that I was absolutely suicidal. I didn't care whether somebody took me out. I was praying, and I think internally that somebody would.
Right.
And so even at that time as a child, and going to school, I developed behavior problems, and they just saw the behavior. They didn't see anything underlying. They didn't see me. And that is a problem with a whole lot of people. We go about our lives and we don't realize that people are going through things that affect their lives in a way where they may be thinking, I don't want to be here. And hurting so much and dealing with that pain alone, isolated. And, you know, I got into police work after that. And I run a crisis intervention team. I am still a police sergeant, and I teach in the police academy. And I teach mental health. I teach about trauma. I teach about de-escalation and how officers can deal with people on the street that may be in crisis or be angry, or, how to de-escalate those situations, right? Um, I also started my own business, which is Shaw Training Solutions, and the Lynette Shaw Group. And just talk about it is my motto, because we don't, and we're encouraged in different cultures not to talk about how we feel, what's happened to us in the past, and we hold it in, and it turns into something else. We take it into relationships. We take it into our jobs. We take it everywhere we go. And if we don't unpack that and really deal with it and look at it, it could be detrimental to us in our lives and to others as well when we snap it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a nutshell, I care because those who are struggling with a mental health issue, I am diagnosed with PTSD. I care because there are many out there like me. There's children that experience very similar things to me experiencing what I had gone through, whether it be domestic violence in their homes, whether there's secret, uh, uncles touching them, or, there's a lot of young people that don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I care because no one saw me. And so I am here. I started the business to train in mental health. I train educators. I train police officers on how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental health issues, or when somebody might be going through a crisis, so that they can, help. It's a tool on their belt to be able to help people and recognize those things that may be ailing people that they have to deal with or serve.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself. It's amazing. And I'm so grateful that I met you and we get to do some of the first responder work together, because the fundamental thing that I think draws us to one another is that we both really care and want to make a difference for the first responder community. And I think, if that's at the core of what we're up to, we can do amazing things. So I'm really grateful for that.
I believe so too. I definitely think so.
And the thing, so what was really interesting, we started to do this 30 minutes for 2 tactics, where we were sharing with anyone who wanted to join. We were doing a Zoom meeting to just share tactics with officers, first responders in general. And, one of the first things that we share in that is the horrible statistics that in 2019, we lost more law enforcement to suicide than we did to officers in the line of duty. And that was a very sobering statistic. It was something like 228 died of suicide and 147 in the line of duty. Like, that is a huge problem, and that is something we have to do more for. So I'm going to ask you probably one of the hardest questions first. Why do you think it is that law enforcement, men and women, do not feel comfortable addressing their well-being until it is too late?
Well, I mean, for me, it's simple, right? We don't trust people. We're in law enforcement. We don't generally trust. And what's really huge is that most police officers, are that type A personality, and everyone looks to us to be strong. And we have this imaginary S on our chest, right? Superman, Superwoman. And we're expected to be all to everybody, and that's including our families and whatnot. And we don't. If you sign on to serve, since I teach in the police academy, I mean, one of the biggest questions that I ask young police officers is, why do you want to be a police officer, right? And the 2 biggest answers are, I want to be a police officer because I want to make a change in my community. I want to be able to help young people to, be all that they can be. I want to make a change in my community, right? And I want to serve, right? And the other one is, well, my family has been in law enforcement, and my dad was a law enforcement officer, and my grandfather was law enforcement officer, and I want to, leave a legacy where, I can help crime, and I could help with the community and all that. And so in the beginning, that's what, that's what we see, that's what we want to do. But then when we get into it, right? I think I told you this one time before. One of the officers that I trained, he got out of the police academy one day, and was on the job the very first day, and walks into a murder suicide. Now, you're a brand new officer. You're not expecting to walk into something like that. And, the husband had, shot the wife, and then he shot himself. And he walks into that scene, right, on his very first day. And how does a young officer or any person deal with something like that, right? Yeah. So you process a scene, you see what's happening, you hear people on the outside crying and oh my God, and whatnot. All of that is stirring up things inside of you, right? That's his very first day. Now this is a picture of what law enforcement officers, the heroes that we are. And I have to say that because every day people have no idea what we're faced with. And then you could the very next week respond to a motor vehicle accident with a beheaded child, and have to cover the remains and all that kind of stuff, right? And then you go home and you have financial problems, or you have an argument with your wife or husband, or you have other issues where a loved one is sick or somebody dies. How that is a recipe for some serious trauma,
Yeah.
vicarious trauma, which is when you see someone else suffering, that you take that on and you begin to, have issues because of it, right? Knowing that a child was raped and you're doing an investigation and you think about all the little things that happened because they're giving you details, okay? Try 30 years, right? Listen, try 1 year of that officer who walks in, one whole year, because in that time, we know that we have an opioid epidemic, right? In that time, we're gonna be working on somebody that is coding out from overdose, right?
Yeah.
And doing CPR and whatnot, and you look around and you see pictures of the family and you hear the wife in the other room crying, and all of that, right, can happen in 1 week.
Yeah.
Of course, police officers, their first go-to is not a therapist and not to talk about people. We have these mechanisms where we joke about things that we joke about things that may be really serious, and that is a serious a way that we try to protect ourselves and try to put humor to things, but inside we're covering up.
Yeah.
It is killing us,
Yeah.
right? Now, over a police officer's career, it's major issues that go on. You snap at home, and there's a lot of different dynamics to it. However, they don't get help because we're not really taught to get help. We're taught to be the one that's there. We're taught to be the one that's strong. We're taught that everybody's depending on us. But what I found over the years is that if the same adage, when you get on the plane, they tell you to, put your mask on first and then help the person that's sitting next to you. And that is exactly the same thing that police officers must do in order to survive being able to do their job. We have to put our mask on first, and we have to take care of ourselves and really recognize that we're hurting and get some kind of help.
One of the things I love about you've told me, like you said, you're in the police academy and you're teaching young recruits. I love that you give them the tip to get yourself a therapist now.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that.
It's absolutely important. Listen, and here's some of the things that they say. Sarge, am I gonna be looked at, be looked over for promotion if I get a therapist? Sarge, and these are concerns, right?
Yeah.
Are my peers gonna, look at me funny? Or are they gonna, are they gonna isolate me because I'm, But see, here's the thing. Nobody really has to know what you do. You can get a therapist before you even go in there. Our insurance is really good. It pays for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that therapy saved my entire life, okay? And this is what I tell them. Get a therapist, whether you need them or not, whether you're going through something or not. What it is to talk to somebody and to get those things that might be bothering you or not, or even sharing things that are making you happy, right? Because in life, on our journey, we're going to have some low lows, and we're going to have some high highs. And it's vitally important to talk to somebody on a regular basis to unpack that stuff, and that has really saved my life. I mean, I needed it for the trauma that I experienced and subsequent traumas that I have experienced, even on the job. having to process young people, 23-year-old young man that I knew, and I had to process the scene, and all the emotions that I was going through doing that, and the 200 pictures that I had to take to be able to put the case together. And so that doesn't leave you.
Yeah.
It doesn't leave you. And having a therapist to unpack that and every week, I don't miss a week. And actually this week I had 2 sessions because there's some weeks that are a little more, pressing. And with COVID-19 now, this pandemic and people dying, you can't go to their funerals. And many of our families have been impacted. And that is just on top of the job that we already do. And are we going to take, COVID-19 home to our families?
Yeah.
And so that is a serious concern for many people in law enforcement. And there's so many other things going on, the social unrest, and all of that is piled on top of who we already are and the things that we can't stop doing our jobs,
right?
Because we have an issue. But what we can do is we can take care of ourselves first.
So I love that. And we are definitely going to go and talk about social unrest. But I want to address one other thing. I know that you have, you're trained in crisis intervention, and you've trained thousands of law enforcement first responders. And I just applaud you for that, the difference that you made. But I think the thing that I learned from you and the work you've done is you forged a lot of trust and built relationships with many different officers across your area and beyond. And you also shared with me that sometimes when they're in crisis, they don't know who to call and they call you. So what do you tell them if they're in crisis and they're reaching out to you, like, tell me what to do. What should I do? I'm at the end of my rope. What would you tell them?
Well, sometimes they just call and they need somebody to listen, right? And so sometimes it's appropriate just to listen so they can get it out and unpack what's going on with them, right? And if somebody is in crisis, I refer them to the proper professional. And it's, because it's important. I'm not a psychologist. I mean, I've been in mental health. I know mental health, but I am not equipped, right, to tell them, hey, you should do this. Advice is never really good, except when you're referring somebody to the appropriate professional so that they can really, get into what they have to get into. Now, if they're experiencing, suicidal thoughts and stuff, I mean, it's a done deal. The only thing that we can do is really get them, the professional help and make sure that they do what they have to do.
Yeah.
And it's a no-brainer. We cannot, if somebody is exhibiting suicidal, ideology, if they are doing that, then we absolutely have to get them help, and we can't hold on to that. But if they're calling before that, and they need to talk, and they're not quite there yet, you get them the help. I mean, there's all kinds. There's numbers that we can call. There's there's
like anonymously, right? Like they're not like feeling like they're going to be found out if they talk.
Right, absolutely, and that is one major problem with us, right? We want to. The first thing they do is take our guns if they think that we're having mental health problems, right? And no police officer wants their gun taken, right? One of the biggest protective factors for suicide with anyone, right, is having one friend that you trust and that you can talk to. That is the biggest protective factor. Mm-hmm. So it's important that we have one person that we can talk to. Very, very important. And what normally I would tell, I would break it down and talk it out. Talk out where they are, and then find the appropriate person to be able, to help them.
Right.
And I have a little bit of, stuff to give, right? I have some, like I said, I don't give advice. When you talk to somebody, especially police officers, they need to be in control of where they're going, right? So you might say, what about going over here to see, a friend of mine that, is a psychologist? What about if, but giving them control of the situation because they're already feeling out of control.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's so important. Especially if there's officers listening, I want them to get your message, because I think it's really important to just have, even if you just have one trusted friend to talk to, that could be the access. Yeah. So let's get into the conversation around social unrest, because I think this is really important, and you're so uniquely positioned, being this beautiful African-American woman, sergeant, former bounty hunter in a rough area of New Jersey. You probably have a very important and unique perspective to share with us around the social unrest. And I want sort of for you to give us your perspective, but also help us understand what you think is missing from this conversation, and what actions we can all do to sort of jointly build this bridge back together, because it's not a pretty sight right now.
It really isn't, and this is adding to some declining mental health with us, with police officers. It really is adding to it. So what we want to do, right, is to really understand one another. We want to understand one another, and that's the issue. Is that there's some things with the Black Lives Matter movement, that police officers don't understand, and there's also things that the Black Lives Matter movement are there. A lot of people put now, and I'm being careful about this because I want to make sure that you understand where I'm coming from, right? So what's happening now is, if you wear a uniform, you're bad, right? And in many cases. Now, there are people who know how to say, wait a minute, that happened in the wake of George Floyd. We know those were bad cops. They were bad cops. They did not do what they signed on to do. They didn't serve. They didn't, the way they were supposed to. They didn't treat, a man the way that they should have, right? And we know that there's bad eggs in every, it could be every police department, in every profession, right? There's bad doctors, and there are bad police officers. I don't have a problem saying that at all, right? And there is a systemic issue. All right. We have to acknowledge that there is a systemic issue. And I think that's the first step, is acknowledging that there is an issue. The problem is that when people, photograph you and swear at you and all that kind of stuff, that does something else. You're feeling attacked, right?
Yeah.
You're really feeling attacked. But we have to understand, as a person in law enforcement, that a lot of people are putting us in the same category as of who we are not. And now, as long as we know who we are and that we've done a good job, it doesn't feel good saying, all cops are bad, you guys are bad. When you've done an amazing job your whole life, you've been a hero, you've saved many lives, you've never been in those situations, right? It feels horrible.
Right.
But we have to deal, because we signed on to serve, right? So we have to come to an understanding of why they are in so much pain. Right. Why are Black people in so much pain? I understand it on both sides, because in Black families, the way that things are passed on are through your grandmother, your great grandmother, and they tell you stories about, when they lived in the South, and how somebody was hung, in our family, and how they had to come up north and whatnot. And so you get these stories, and every time you hear about police, it's police let it happen, or it happened by police, and like that. So there is generational pain that's going on. And in any city, if you have a bad experience with police officers, a lot of times it's traumatic, and it's in your head. Okay, I'll give you an example. There was a case very recently where police officers stopped a car with kids and a mom in it, and it fit the description. A license plate fit the description of somebody who had just done a crime. Those police officers took out children that were 4, 5, 15, and the mother, handcuffed them and put them on the asphalt in the street. Okay. Now, here's a Black mother with her children that she cannot make her children feel safe. She has no control of the situation. How do you think that mother, and it's just an example of why, of why. And by no means, look, I know how heroic and amazing that the police community is. And to be in this situation is devastating, but we have to go through it. We have to go through it. We have to understand. I would say that we need to educate ourselves about some of the things that led to this.
Right.
We really need to be educated, because in educating ourselves, we gain compassion, because there's many things that I have learned very recently that make a big difference, right? And I'll give you the example of Thomas Jefferson, our founding fathers, and how we are taught in the school system. All of us are taught in the school system that, founding father and all the great things that he did, right? And on the other side of it, and this is well documented, right? On the other side of it, we have to look at the truth. So Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, and he fathered children with a 14-year-old slave, 8 children, right? We don't hear that in school.
Yeah.
Right? We don't hear that in school. And so now you have 8 Black children that were sired by the founding fathers and a 14-year-old, right? So in police work, that's rape.
Yeah.
Right? That's rape. And Black people, we're like, whoa, you didn't teach us that in school.
Yeah.
Right? So we must educate ourselves. We have to educate ourselves about what's going on, and not just, go along with what the next person may be saying.
And I guess as a white woman, to understand that and to recognize that that's a scar, that's a scar, right? Like, we got to get that is a scar. As much as that happened a long time ago, it's a scar, and it affects you, right? And that's where, like you're saying, educate yourself, find compassion through education, so you can try to understand what it's like to walk in the shoes of other people. Right,
but you need to. Here's the thing. I know you're saying it's a scar, right? But what it is, it's really, I can see how you could perceive that, right? But I'm going to tell you, it's an open wound that has not healed.
Got it.
That's what it's an open wound that hasn't healed. And that's why we have everything that's going on, because it's like, enough of this bleeding.
Yeah.
Enough of this bleeding, and so us being able to understand that, we have to be the bridge. We have to be the bridge, even though we're being attacked.
Yeah.
There are ways that we can begin to build bridges, at one police officer at a time, with one citizen encounter at a time.
Yeah.
Whether they like you or they don't, show who you are, be your authentic self, and show some compassion. Listen, when they're attacking us, they're not attacking us personally, because they don't know us, right?
Right.
So you got to get to the bottom of what's really hurting them. Why are they really attacking us? They're angry about something.
Right.
Be able to hear what that is, instead of taking it personally. If you fear for your safety, that's that's something else.
Right.
But if you could listen, and if you could, listen to what that pain is, because they are not attacking us.
Yeah.
They don't know us.
Yeah.
They're attacking the uniform.
Right.
Yeah.
So amazing. It's such a very important point. It's this generalization of groups, and we're all human beings. We're all people first.
Yes, absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
I want to, and we can come back to this, but I want to talk a little bit about the mental health awareness, the mental health de-escalation training, the mental health resilience training. Why do you think it's important now more than ever for police chiefs and police departments to really be thinking about the wellness and giving additional education and support to their officers?
It is extremely important that we get this training, because things are so volatile right now, and everything is so heightened, and we need another tool on our belt to be able to, really navigate that, because it's we're taught things in the police academy, but when somebody's in your face, it's very difficult to think about de-escalation and what it could be and all that kind of stuff. So it's important to take a step back from things and to, really slow everything down, not to quickly react to anything. And we need to be trained in what crisis looks like. Somebody could be so angry and displaying, aggressive behavior, but they're not going to put their hands on you, right? And so you need to be able to say, hey, my man, what, tell me what's going on. I really want to know what's going on. But there are some of us, right, that will be like, oh my God, that's aggressive behavior. I'm going to lock you up if you don't stop. But you have to care about what is really going on. And you can save your life, and you could save a community member's life just by caring, or even, talking about, compassion, like having compassion and asking, tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on, and trying to calm them down. Now, there's going to be situations where you can't do that, but I absolutely believe in this training. There's a research project they did in my county, and where we trained a bunch of people that work in the jail. Mm-hmm. Right? A lot of the officers that correction officers that work in the jail. Mm-hmm. And we trained a good portion, maybe 50% of that population. And within a 3-year period, their use of force, which, having to go hands-on, was declined. It went down by 90% because they took the crisis intervention class. Wow. And they were able to. That is a major decline. And what happens is, okay, when you don't have to use force, that means you don't get hurt.
Yeah.
And that person doesn't get hurt. And then your organization isn't open to liability. There's so many advantages to not having to go hands-on. I'll tell you the truth, I don't want to fight. Yeah. I don't want to fight. I don't want to have to go hands-on. I don't want to have to go to my gun. And I don't think any police officer wants that to happen, right? Yeah. Because we want to go home too. Right. We want you to go home safe, and we want to go home. Yeah. And so that training and being able to recognize when it is a mental health issue, mm-hmm. or the person is in crisis, is critical. Right. It's critical, and it's life-saving. Right. And so police chiefs have to invest in their officers, give them an additional tool on their tool belt to be able to use that to be able to go home, to be able to, to be able to help others that are in the community that might be going through a whole lot of stress. And many police officers are already social workers and psychologists. We talk to people that are having issues. They come to, some come to us, when they're having issues. And some of the things that you can do is they're very simple. And sometimes it's just listening to somebody.
Yeah.
And now you've gained one person that trusts the police.
Right.
Right. And that, the crisis intervention training, the de-escalation training, it's critical. It's critical for any police officer.
Right. That's amazing. You know, the thing I also love about the work you do and our conversations that we've had are around biases, right? You don't, anyone, law enforcement and beyond, has their own unconscious bias of what mental illness is, whether it's fueled by the media or fueled by incidents, or they just have no relationship to mental health. And the thing I really love about the work that you do and that you've been given accolades for is the ability to shift how officers relate to mental health, in the fact that you're educating them in what it is, just fundamentally what it is. If you have no relationship to it, then everyone could be perceived as crazy. But
Absolutely. And I do when I first come into the class, we do a really good exercise, right? So I put on the wall, I put a couple of sheets of paper, and I try to loosen them up at first, because you don't know what to expect. And I say, okay, what do you call somebody with mental illness, right? And it's called a shout out exercise, right? And so they shout out crazy, batshit crazy, all different kinds of things. I mean, and some things that, window licker. I mean, all of these ridiculous, crazy, all the things that we think in our head and maybe we don't say, right?
right.
But police officers have the opportunity to see so many different people running down the street naked and stuff like that. And so, the first thing that comes to your mind, oh, this is crazy, but here, then, right? So the other sheet of paper, I turn it around and I say, well, what do you call somebody with cancer? And they go, survivor. They said, they say things like, strong, courageous, or whatever. And then I let them look at both of those papers, and I go, tell me what is the difference in your perception of somebody that has a mental health issue and cancer. Both these things are diseases of the body. Mental health is a disease of the brain, right? Can we help that? Can a person help if they get cancer? Can they, right? And then we talk about family. How would you want a police officer, if somebody was responding to your home and your child had bipolar disorder, or they were in crisis and whatever, what would you want a police officer to say to them? Would you want them to say any of the things that you described them as? And the whole room, it just, and it's almost like a light bulb goes on.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I never thought about it that way.
Right.
So that's why I encourage, right? I encourage officers to think about and to do, and this is what I tell the recruits, right? When you serve, treat every person that you come in contact with like you would want your mom, your kids, and whatever to be treated, right? Because you don't know what they're going through, and you have no idea. A lot of people, they call the police because there's a problem.
Right.
And we should be trusted to handle that problem, number one, with respect, with integrity, and with a whole lot of compassion, because families are having a really hard time when they have somebody that has mental illness in their family. It's a lifetime struggle. And that navigating that process is difficult, and it takes a whole lot for you to be able to understand that. Man, you're going to be a super cop. You're going to be superhero if you can walk into a home and understand what that person's going through and be able to walk them through a process to get their loved one help. Yeah. That is the most fulfilling thing that we can do. It just makes my heart happy when I see officers, and when they've taken my classes, they'll call and say, "Oh my God, this works. I just talked somebody off of a bridge. I just made somebody drop a gun, and normally I would, pull my," and it's so fulfilling to be able to give officers these tools. Yeah. One officer, a SWAT officer that I trained years ago, he said, "Lynette, you have no idea the impact that you were having." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Listen, I'm one officer, right? Last year, I probably had 200 mental health calls. I said, yeah. He said, that's one officer. He says, on none of those calls did I have to use my gun. I had to use force maybe on a couple,
Right.
but I am saving lives, he said. He goes, if without that knowledge, I would have never known. Now he asked me, how many officers have you trained? I said, about 10,000, right? He goes, I'm one officer, 200 people.
Yeah.
You need to think about the impact that you're having by giving us these tools to be able to do our job. And I thought it just blew my mind. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, imagine if 10,000 times 200.
And this
And
was, and so this was all born because of your own story and your courage to tell your story and use it as a tool that would, fuel you to educate, right? Like, God bless.
listen, I needed somebody to see me and to acknowledge that I was in pain. I just acknowledging I was in pain myself,
Right.
was so vitally important. But that I get the opportunity to train police officers and to train educators, to give them tools to help others. I mean, that is freaking major for me. And to me, it's awesome. It is. They say, right, you never work a day in your life if you're doing something that you love, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is something that I love because I've seen the results of being able to do that. There is nothing more valuable to a police officer to go home after they know that they talked somebody off of a bridge and they could have lost their lives or they saved a life. This is what we get in police work for. We want to do that stuff. We want to see that. And it just brings so much joy to be able to, have the tools and to be able to impart that to other police officers so that, number one, they're safe, they can go home, the community is safe, and they can go home knowing that they're really a freaking rock star, right? Seriously. And too often, nowadays, that's not what people are saying about us, but we have to say it about ourselves because we know what we do and we know where our heart is. And regardless of what's going on, we need to continue to understand how other people are feeling and the pain that they're going through so that we can also, reach a hand out, and say, hey, listen, how can I help?
Yeah.
How can I help? How can we even sit down and have a conversation? So important to our mental health, so important to being able to gain the trust again of the public, because the media is nuts and you can see something every day and consume all of that. And guess what? It starts to get on the inside of us. They say, right, a boat can float, but when you let the water get on the inside of it, it will sink. So we cannot consume all the negativity and also do our jobs. And we need to know that. And if it does get on the inside of us, we need to do something to get it out. And my number one thing is get a therapist. There is nothing more. And now, listen, you don't even have to go. It's telemedicine. You can do it. That's what I do. My therapist can't, come out. I don't miss a week.
Yeah.
I do not miss a week because I realize even the impact of social media, what's going on in the media, even if you watch too much of that, it's getting inside, and we can't allow that to happen and be equipped to serve the way that we want to.
You are amazing. Thank you so much for, oh my gosh, thank you for serving. Thank you for all you do in the community. Thank you for being such a vocal, outspoken advocate, for being a change maker. I am so honored to know you, and I'm thrilled to get to work with you. So thank you for joining my Conversations That Matter.
Thank you for inviting me. I think the world of you, Michelle. I do. And I love that you're an advocate, and I love the work that you're doing. And I am wishing us as partners, just to go to the next level, to be able to help people, because I think in numbers, I think together that we can do so much more. then we can do a part. We need a team.
Yes.
To be able to get to the people that we need to get to.
That's right.
Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Thank you. All right, my dear. You have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.